Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalat wassalam ala rasulillah. This is going to be an interactional session. Abdul Malik has already passed out the case study to you that we're going to look at, but I wanted to take 5 minutes to introduce the interaction, because what we're going to do is take a look at the case study together and answer some questions together. I'd like to suggest that when it comes to the area of mental health and counseling in the Muslim community, we're very much in a developmental stage, and that things are happening as we speak, and the ground is literally shifting under us. And so the reality is that whatever we say now, and I think that was one of the problems with Dr. Wahib's presentation, once you collect the data, it's changed. And so what we thought we would do, because this is a project that's ongoing for us, is talk about some of the issues that people might face in getting imams and chaplains to work together. I just want to say 3 things before we do this, and I'll give you some directions. First of all, what authority is shifting in the Muslim community? Authority, A-U-T-H-O-R-I-T-Y. Authority, I think I spelled it correct, the right to do something. If you look around us, you'll find that at least when I came to Islam in 1979, the imam was it. And you'll find many more masajids where there's a majlis or a board of directors, and at least there's shared governance there. And so there's a difference. With the advent of chaplaincy, the authority around gender has shifted. With the advent of chaplaincy, the authority around gender has shifted. In other words, people are not used to, at least in this country, seeing women speak with religious authority in the Muslim community. But with more and more Muslim women chaplains in hospitals, in schools, and other places, that is happening. You know, it's not something that people are thinking about very much, but authority is shifting. The second thing that's shifting is boundaries. Boundaries between what? Between traditional Muslims and modern Muslims. What do I mean between traditional Muslims and modern Muslims? Between people who tend to look backward for their values. I'm talking about tendencies now. I'm not talking about good or bad here. I'm talking about tendencies, who tend to look to the history of Islam for their values, and the people who tend to look in the here and now or in the future. Tendencies now. I'm not talking about good or bad, but you can see the difference in the way they approach things, the difference in the way they dress, the difference in the way they approach their religion. And so this is a tension. This boundary is a tension within the Muslim community. There is a tension between the Muslim community and the non-Muslim community that imams and chaplains have to face, particularly after 9/11. I mean, the ground is shifting under us. The ground is shifting under us. And finally, there's a tension between those who attend the masjid and those who don't. Of course, those who don't are the majority, right? You know this, right? About 70%. And so anything that you do has to take these shifting boundaries into context. The last point I want to make is that, and it's sort of what I was saying when I was talking in Dr. Wahib's position, is that we're in the process of capacity building. We're in the process of capacity building, and that this particular case study is part of this process of capacity building. But the thing I want to say about it is that these conferences, these workshops, and getting to network with one another, these things are critically important, because often we wouldn't know about the good things that other people are doing without coming together from time to time. Okay, so remember, authority is shifting, right? Right? Boundaries are changing, and we're in the process of capacity building. So what you have before you is a case study that is a work in progress that really involves the 3 of us. I mean, myself, Matina, and Abdul Malik. This is something that we are just beginning to do, and we're going to invite you to talk about what issues, particularly in terms of grief counseling. I want to speak a minute about it. What we're doing is dealing with authority issues, right? Because who has the right to bury whom at what particular time? We're talking about boundaries between the funeral home and the masjid, between the non-Muslim family and the Muslim. I mean, a lot of the issues that I talked about are buried in this particular case study. Because at the end of the day, whether or not we're going to build a capacity to work with this, and by the way, a lot of the talk in this conference has been mainly about people whose families either immigrated here recently or years ago, But this case study is really about converts, right? It's about convert. And by the way, Masjid Islam is not only a convert community. It has converts and people that immigrated here as well. But in this particular case, it's about converts because it's with converts where all of this tension comes to play around authority, right? Because you have a Christian family around boundary management and capacity building. So what we're going to do is that we're going to break into 3 groups. They'll be facilitated by the 3 of us. And we're going to ask you to reflect on the issues at the bottom of the page on the front. We gave you the outline, right? The outline of what the issue is about. We also gave you Connecticut state law, in case you wanted that, around who's next to kin, because that's always an issue. In cases like this, next of kin is always an issue. In cases, that is, wherein somebody dies intestate without a will, and the next question is who has the authority to say something about how they're going to be buried and what happens to their estate. And so the way we're going to do this is that we're going to count off, Abdulaziz, is that right? We're going to start with Abdulaziz here. We're going to count off by 3s, so keep you from being with your friends, basically, right? Count off by 3s, and then we're going to put you in the three groups. Abdulaziz, you're 1.
2, 3, 1.
Okay. Is it on?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, Bismillah. Group 1, one of our things that we said, or rather we focused on, who should take responsibility? It was said that the family should, jointly with the chaplain, whoever's the lead in the masjid or wherever, should take the lead, basically. And they also said that the chaplain with the sister should approach the masjid and the chaplain should address the issue. And then another one said the family should find out if the person had taken Shahada, which they were concerned about whether or not he was practicing. And then they looked at the law. The law said that the family had the responsibility. So working with the family, with the masjid, was important for them. So that was who they said should take the responsibility. Should take responsibility. Should I go through all 3? How to approach responsibility, respond to the family involved. The counselor and the sister should talk about burials and take it from there. And the masjid, whoever's in authority, imam, chaplain, whoever, should do this. I'm going really fast. And then what to do to prepare or handle grief issues that are likely to arise. They said the chaplain should do so because they're trained in grief. And then it was said any member of the masjid, because this person would try to get the one that knows most and then deal with the issues. And then again it was said any member, and depending on whether or not that person was known or not, people would respond. So that's again any member of the masjid. And then again it was said the authority, which is the imam or the authority person to do it. And then and then we looked at what are some takeaways. We said it's important that you know the law of wherever you are, and that the law be taken into consideration, and that people should have wills, and that there should be a great community awareness of laws, rules, and regulations surrounding these issues.
Some of the issues that we raised in group 2 is that mostly around conflict and tension. So one of it was in case the mother wants to bury the deceased differently. Maybe she wants to use Christian funeral rites, or also probably want to have a minister present to say non-Muslim prayers. In terms of family wanting to view, Do you have a viewing process in place? Do you delay viewing so that family members who live from far away can come and view? We also talked about some of the tensions that happens at the burial ground. The family, the mother and the sister wants to come to burial ground. We talked about part of also the differences with the delay of family members who say, okay, don't bury yet, wait till we come. I mean, we're in a foreign country or far off state. We also talked about the issues of estate or inheritance. Maybe different family members can come out of the woodwork with different expectations of getting part of the inheritance. So these issues were very helpful. We kind of did it in reverse in negotiating who takes on what responsibilities. And we talked about the chaplain with the experience verifying with the Bureau of Prisons that the inmate was Muslim. We said that we shouldn't spend too much time in trying to find out whether they're really Muslim or not. If the prison form says they're Muslims, that should suffice. If the prison chaplain says they're Muslim, or we have at least any single indication that they're Muslim, that should be sufficient for us. And should also be responsible for making the burial arrangements. If it's a poor masjid, raising the funds for the burial ground and the other places, negotiating with the funeral home. We thought because of gender dynamics, the female chaplain should engage both the mother and the sister, and should use that as an opportunity to facilitate interfaith dialogue and understanding and educate not just the Christians, the mother and the sister and their family, but also the Muslims too, the imam. So there's a whole lot, and we'll talk about what they'll do. The imam, of course, being the knowledgeable person about Islamic practices, faith issues and things like that, will lead the janazah. And the chaplains are responsible for engaging the family, educating them, and doing the washing of the body. We talked about the approach mostly being to be respectful of the other family's grieving process, to put everything into the cultural context and negotiate and educate and compromise between all the various parties that play here. We have families who are not Muslims. We have the imam who may have certain maybe conservative or strict interpretations of Islam. Just in how all the differences in terms of the viewing, perhaps allow close immediate family members to view, but don't make it an extended process for the whole extended family to come and view. To also help them, provide pastoral care to them too, to help them facilitate their own support systems. If they have ministers and they have chaplains from their communities, encouraging them to use those resources while also educating them about what is going on in the funeral home and the Muslim rights. So a lot of what the chaplain, we talk about chaplains doing will be, most of what we talked about in this group talked about education and negotiation. You're negotiating with different parties, you're educating them, you're also negotiating, you're walking this tightrope between faith boundaries and different cultural practices, but also not acknowledging the grieving process of the families, validating it, but also being cognizant of your own responsibility to your community. So I think that's, in 2 minutes, that's what we talked about in group 2.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm sorry about the rushing. Group 3, we have several takes on what the primary responsibility. One was to contact the family and educate them around Islamic rights. Asked the family to contact the prison chaplain's office. One person said that the first responsibility was to the community as a whole, particularly given the community was economically stressed and it might be a financial obligation. And then the next question, is there any volunteers involved? Because in the case study, there was talk about volunteers going into the prison, whether any of those volunteers knew the person, and consideration for other inmates, and just something I hadn't thought about, who were grieving. That's something we haven't thought about at all. Likely to encounter the issue of the law, the authority issue, our right to do something. You might have to convince the family to bury the person Islamically. The question is find out what the prior faith of the person was, what impact that would have. Was he fully informed when he took Shahada? And we came to a similar conclusion that the other groups did it, just as long as that he was identified as a Muslim, and that Martina, the female chaplain, should deal with the mom, and a primary role of that team was translation of the cultural differences between the family and an Islamic community. In preparation for grief counseling, you should know who's who in the family, and we talk about two groups of people, the troublemakers and the quiet people, people who might be having big issues, and that we should pay particular attention to them on the day of the funeral. Being a good listener, pay attention to the quiet ones, and that there should be a generic process that wherein we explain to people. We have 2 minutes to take, no more than 3 comments or questions, and they can't be long because lunch is waiting. Anybody comment, question in general? Everybody's fine. Let me just say that this is something that's a work in progress for us. If you got any feedback for us, we're trying to develop a model for imams and chaplains working together. So this wasn't something that's made up. This is something that we've just begun to do in the last 6 months. And let me just say that our approach has been mainly educational and present ourselves as a support to the family. We're sorry to hear that your loved one has died. We just want to help you do what he wanted to do. And that's always the thing that you want to avoid for those who do this thing is getting into a battle. Particularly legally, you're going to lose it, right? If there's no wasiya, if there's no will, you're going to lose that battle. So I turn on my extra nice voice and my extra nice manners with people in this situation, particularly if they're cooperating. I thank them and thank them and thank them and thank them. And thank you for being patient with us. Assalamu alaikum.